Non-monogamy isn't a free-for-all. It's a co-created relationship. And without solid, shared agreements, it gets messy real fast. Hey, I'm Alicia, your non-monogamous relationship coach. And today on Nope, We're Not Monogamous, I'm showing you how to stop assuming, start collaborating, and build the kind of relationship agreements that actually feel good for everyone involved. More specifically, collaborative agreements. Because if you've ever said, wait, I thought we agreed on this, only to be met with a shrug, an excuse, or that awkward moment where you realize that maybe you had assumed there was an agreement? Yeah, you're not alone. This episode is about why collaboration matters so much more than compromise, and how building agreements together can be the difference between a relationship full of resentment and a relationship full of real connection. Or, multiples of those. Okay, I just really want to say this, that collaboration is essential. And shitty compromise is exhausting. I remember this couple that I had worked with, we'll call them Jess and Morgan, and they had agreed that they wouldn't sleep over at new partners' houses. But the kicker is that they never actually talked about why. They just kind of threw that out there. And so when Morgan had crashed on someone's couch after a late night, Jess exploded or imploded, like really had a hard time. And not because of the sleepover itself, but because it felt like a betrayal of an agreement that they thought they had, but they hadn't actually agreed on or like really figured out. So that wasn't really collaboration. That was like guessing. That was a silent compromise. That was a lot of assumptions. And that kind of dynamic, that kind of relating builds a lot of resentment really fast. And I've totally been there, right? One of my first really big emotional upsets with in my relationship with my husband was a complete misunderstanding of our agreements after a threesome that we had had with a friend. It was fun and it was hot and everything felt really good in the moment. But the next morning I had to leave for school. I was tired. I was emotionally depleted. I was a little bit hungover. I was a little bit raw. And when I came home, I found out that they'd had sex again after I left, right? I completely freaked out. My stomach dropped into I had a pit in my stomach. And I was crying and I felt like I had been betrayed, like he had broken an agreement and was abandoning me. And I felt like he had cheated on me, except we had never actually made an agreement like that. We had never even talked about that. And to me, it felt really obvious that when I left, the fun was supposed to be over. Everyone go your own ways, right? That without me there, they had crossed a line. And to him, it was just a part of the same encounter. To me, I had this unspoken belief that if I wasn't there, it shouldn't continue. I thought it was obvious that the event ended when I left, and that without me, it would cross an invisible line. But we had never agreed to that. We had never talked about that. That was a boundary that had lived in my head, not in our shared understanding. For him, we're in bed naked together. We're cuddling. We just woke up. Why wouldn't things continue? Which now to me makes sense, right? This wasn't a cheating situation. This was a misalignment. This was about a belief that I had never voiced. I had never shared. And it was an agreement that we had not built together. There was no agreement. So now I joke that if people are naked in a room together, it's highly probable that sex might happen. But I also don't assume boundaries anymore. I don't assume people know my boundaries. So we co-create them. And there have been so many times in my entire non-monogamous journey when I said yes to things I wasn't actually okay with. Not because I was pressured, but because I felt like I was wrong for being uncomfortable. I thought that if I was feeling jealous, it meant I needed to grow. I thought that discomfort was a sign that I wasn't doing non-monogamy right. I was doing something wrong. So I kept trying to force myself to be cool with things like hookups and date nights and dynamics I wasn't ready for, not just for my partners, but for myself. And instead of speaking up and saying hey, I'm uncomfortable. I'm unsure. I need time to process this. I'd be like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'm good. Yeah, let's do this. And inside, I was really spiraling. It was like this kind of silent performance that led to a lot of unnecessary arguments, a lot of emotional crashes. I thought I was being a good partner, but I was actually abandoning myself. I was not being a good partner to me. And so I really, truly believe that collaboration is the antidote to resentment. Like, we have to work together to find the things that work for everybody in the relationship. Over the years, my partners surprised me in all of the best ways. There have been so many moments since then, since that first real hard time for me, um, where I expected that I would need to go along with something just to like keep the peace or just to like be cool or to do poly right. Like if I wanted to be good at poly or prove that I was secure, I had to swallow my discomfort. And so I'd brace myself for the emotional labor of saying yes when what I really meant was, ooh, I'm not sure yet. There've been a lot of moments where I thought, okay, brace yourself. It's fine. Put on your big girl panties. We can do this. This is what my partner wants, so this is what we're doing. And then I'd bring something up, hesitant, tense, ready to fold, and my partner would look at me and be like, "Wait, what do you want? What would feel best for you?" And that felt so freaking good. We'd slow down. We'd actually talk, not rush to solutions, not power through the discomfort, not rip off the Band-Aid, not make one-sided promises, not say fake yeses. And eventually we'd find something that worked for both of us, a third path that I didn't even know was on the table. A collaborative solution that made space for both of our truths, our desires, our needs. And honestly, those are the moments that rewired something in me. They showed me that my needs aren't obstacles. They're part of the relationship. They're part of what makes it work. I want to repeat that. You might need to hear that again. Your needs aren't obstacles. Okay? They're a part of you. They're a part of what makes your relationship work. They're a part of what makes you lovable. They're a part of what makes you charming. They're a part of what makes you you. They are necessary in your relationships. Okay? And that's what real collaboration is, right? It's not that we always agree. It's that we create something, we co-create something that works for everyone involved. We build relationships that people want to be in, that you want to be in. So let's talk about what makes a solid collaborative agreement in non-monogamy, okay? I'm gonna give you a couple of steps here. Five steps. First, you want to start with your shared values. Ask yourself and your partner, what are we trying to create here? If we go back to Jess and Morgan, they eventually realized that they were not actually afraid of sleepovers. Sleepovers were not the issue. They were scared of disconnection, of feeling disconnected. Once we had uncovered that and realized what it really was, once that was on the table, they were able to make agreements that shifted to what actually mattered for them, that they could find ways that they would feel connected even with sleepovers, right? So the second thing you have to do is you need to revisit your agreements and adjust them regularly. What worked 3 months ago might not work right now. I always try to revisit agreements with my partners seasonally, right? Sometimes more if emotions have been running high. But you want to ask yourself and your partners, is this still working for me? Is this still working for you? Is it still working for our relationship? And if the answer isn't a full yes, it needs attention. Got to keep cooking it. Number 3, you want to respect individual needs. You are different humans. And your agreements don't need to be symmetrical. They don't need to be the same. I had a client who felt really, really terrible for wanting a check-in, a text check-in when their partner was on a date. And what we unpacked was that it wasn't that they were needy. This was a way that they could regulate, that they could feel safe and not spend the whole date thinking about what was going on, right? And once her partner understood that, she was able to get rid of the guilt, and the agreement felt more generous rather than a restriction. Like once their partner was like, oh, if I send you a quick text after a couple of hours and let you know, hey, having a good time, you're still on my mind. And then she was able to like just go about her day and do her thing and not like spin out like that she had been abandoned, made a huge difference. So let's go number 4. You want to discuss your deal breakers right up front. Not everything needs to be figured out through failure. I don't know how many of you do this. Run smack up against your boundaries and get like a broken nose against them. And then you're like, ooh, that hurt. So you want to ask yourself, what would make me feel really unsafe or really unseen in this dynamic? Like really dig in. What are deal breakers for you? And then talk about them before someone crosses a line that they didn't know existed. 5, celebrate the agreements that are working. Don't just use check-ins to fix things. Use them for gratitude, because that goes so freaking far, right? Maybe you say like, hey, I really appreciated how you checked in before changing plans. That made me feel so considered. You didn't have to do that. I don't have a say in what you're doing, but it shows that you thought of me and you considered me. That feels really freaking good. So thank you. That's not fluff. Like that really reinforces a sense of safety and a sense of collaboration in your relationship. Why does this feel so hard for so many of us? Probably because most of us weren't taught how to collaborate. We were taught how to perform love or protect ourselves or silently sacrifice. And honestly, like we live in a culture where compromise often means whoever gives up the most clearly loves the most. That sucks. That leads to resentment. It's not collaborative. It's a competition to see who can self-abandon faster and have like the most emotional martyrdom, right? You don't have to give up your needs to be lovable, right? Collaboration asks you to bring your full truth into the relationship, all of you, and work together to make space for everyone's freaking humanity, right? When you're collaborating, it says we both matter. We both get to feel safe. We get to build something that works, not just something that looks good on paper or that other people would approve of. Under this patriarchal society that we live in, a lot of us, especially women or those conditioned and raised as little girls, we're taught to equate love with being chosen, being easy, with not making waves. And so when you actually start naming your needs and holding boundaries and saying, that agreement doesn't work for me anymore, you might feel like a bad partner. You might feel guilty, but you are not a bad partner. You're just being honest. You're just being real. And a real love, a real connection, a healthy relationship can hold that. Okay, so let me give you a couple of questions, like 3 questions. So the next time you sit down with your partners, you can try this. You want to ask, what agreements feel really good to you right now? Is there anything that we've outgrown? And then ask yourself, what's something I've been hinting at instead of actually naming or asking for? Okay. These questions build real trust. It feels like it might create tension, but it actually removes the tension because you get to get real with each other and then you get vulnerable, and that creates intimacy and connection and lots of good, juicy things. So many of us, especially non-monogamous folks, but also monogamous, like just all of us, run a lot on assumptions instead of clarity, instead of a shared clarity. So stop guessing. Stop hoping your partners just know what you want or just know how you feel. Stop agreeing to things that make your stomach turn. And instead, let's co-create the kind of love where everyone feels safe and heard and held and can have fun and can be sexy and all of the things that you want, right? Because collaboration isn't just about the logistics. This is like how you build love in action. Here's the thing. Collaboration isn't just about keeping the peace, right? It's about building relationships where everyone gets to show up fully and be met there. That's why it's one of the 5 pillars of my Beyond Monogamy method: clarity, connection, communication, collaboration, and confidence. When one of those pieces is missing, it's really easy to feel off balance. But when they all come together, that's when non-monogamy starts to feel really grounded, connected, and actually sustainable. If you're starting to realize that you've been assuming instead of being in alignment, or you've been saying yes when you're actually a no, let's talk. I offer free clarity chats to help you figure out where your relationships need more support and what's next for you. You can book yours at aliciapayne.com/chat. And it's zero pressure, zero performance. It's just a space to get clear together. If you love this episode, if it was helpful for you, follow or subscribe. Nope, we're not monogamous, wherever you are listening to your podcasts. And if you're watching this on YouTube, like the episode, leave a comment, subscribe. This helps more people see this. This helps reach more people who need it. And you don't have to compromise your truth, your desires, your needs in order to be loved. You just need to build relationships that have real collaboration, that everyone is enjoying, and the courage to choose them. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next week. Bye.